Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning to a very interesting webinar. My name is Edison Martinez, and I am an MBA student in sustainable business here at MIU. And I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to this webinar. We have a really exciting agenda today. This morning, we have a very special speaker. With us, we have Dr. Rajrajeshwari Candace Badgett, and she's going to be speaking to us for a few minutes about her experience and knowledge in the business and practice of Ayurveda. So if you're here to hear about that, definitely you are in the right place. Dr. Candace is the director of the Women's TM Organization for North America, founder of the Women's Institute at MIU, owner and operator of the Raj, Ayurvedic Health Center and Spa in Fairfield, Iowa. Dr. Candace is also one of the International Trustees, Mother Divine, and a longtime TM teacher who has brought so much value to the TM organization and to this world. And also, I'm gonna quickly introduce some of our panelists today who join us. But before I do that, I want to thank Professor Ayako and Viola and the entire team for supporting and putting this webinar together and to invite me to participate and moderate this webinar. With that being said, I want to introduce our two panelists, Maya Lisboa, who is a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, a certified yoga teacher, and currently the director of operations for a startup healing arts center on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. How beautiful. And Roxana Medeiros, who is the director of the online BA program in Ayurveda, Wellness, and Integrative Health, and instructor of Physiology and Health at MIU. So let's begin. It's now 11:03, and let's welcome Dr. Candace Badgett. Dr. Candace, good morning.
Thank you, Edison, for welcoming me here. And I'm happy to be talking about a subject that I've been intimately involved with for 30 years now. We had the opportunity to, and I really mean it when I say the opportunity, to build one of the first Ayurvedic health centers in North America, and that is the Raj. And I say it's an opportunity because it presented incredible challenges that were incredibly growth-inducing. So my husband and I, we had no experience whatsoever in this field. As a matter of fact, we'd never had an employee. And the other thing is that we started our own construction company in order to build the Raj, and we built 36,000 square feet under roof. And I'm going to share my screen now. So I'd like to just show you a picture here. We, as said, we built 36,000 square feet under roof, and then we had to figure out how to run it. And we had to understand the business. And it was a little bit like learning how to swim by being thrown in the lake. That's how it all happened. And it's been really the opportunity of a lifetime, because the knowledge of Ayurveda is so unfathomably deep and profound. And the thing that I wanted to talk about today as we, hold on one second here. I'm messing this up a little bit. I hope not. Okay. I wanted to talk first about the practice, and I don't want to go so much into the very specifics of Ayurveda. When we get into questions and answers, if everyone would like some Ayurvedic tips, but I think probably many are very familiar with basic principles of Ayurveda. What I want to look at here is that the practice of Ayurveda has never been so glaringly urgent as it is today. And when we look at what's been going on in these past 2 years, we can definitely say that this pandemic has brought the world's attention to the urgent need for a different approach to healthcare. And when Maharishi brought out the knowledge of Ayurveda back in the 1980s, he did so because he said that Western medicine had transgressed its own basic tenet. And that is, above all else, do no harm. At that time, and it's still the case today, Western medicine was and is the third leading cause of death in the United States. And what that means is that mistakes in surgery, misdiagnosis, side effects of Western medicine where the treatment ended up being worse than the disease. These are the kinds of things that have actually allowed Western medicine to be the third leading cause of death in the country. And so that was the point where she said it's time to allow every individual to take their health and their happiness back into their own hands. And this is through the knowledge of Ayurveda. And it had to be something that was free from harmful side effects. This was really a concern. And I think as we look back at these past 2 years, as we struggled with a pandemic, we were utilizing an approach that neither stopped infection nor stopped transmission. It wreaked havoc with our economy. It caused a pandemic of fear and anxiety, and it adversely affected the academic and developmental growth of our children. So the problem was that all the attention went to one thing, a cure. Everybody focused on a cure while neglecting the fact that those most at risk had poor health due to lifestyle choices. And that's what left them vulnerable to this amped up virus. So never did we hear about changing our lifestyle habits and strengthening our immune system, even though the World Health Organization in 2013, they made a very important statement. They said, it's this lifestyle epidemic, this lifestyle disease epidemic. They said it causes a much greater public health threat than any other epidemic known to man. So this is where we have to now start looking at Ayurveda as an alternative approach to health. And let's just take a look here at the advantages of Ayurveda. And first and foremost, Ayurveda is prevention-oriented. So this is exactly what the World Health Organization was coming to the conclusion. Back in 2013, they were coming to the conclusion that it's these unhealthy lifestyles that are really the breeding ground for poor health. And that is more important than anything else. And so, the thing about lifestyle choices is that on the basis of having proper education about what kind of choices to make, then we can literally eliminate most of the causes of chronic disorders. So this is the gift of Ayurveda. It is prevention-oriented. Now, Ayurveda is a very comprehensive system of medicine, very sophisticated pharmacopoeia, whole texts on surgery. It is absolutely holistic and complete, but huge emphasis on prevention and huge emphasis on education in terms of proper lifestyle choices that allow us to live life in accord with the laws of nature and thereby have the support of the laws of nature. The second point is that the treatment modalities of Ayurveda are free from harmful side effects. And at one point, Maharishi started, he built this kind of plexiglass box in the middle of the meeting hall there in Meru. And he started to have all the scientists collect all the published papers which talked about the harm of specific drugs. And then he put them in this plexiglass box that ultimately went all the way up to the ceiling, and it was referred to as the high heaps of hazards. So it was a very dramatic way of making the point that Western medicine, modern medicine, had transgressed its own fundamental basic tenet of, above all else, do no harm. The second point is that Ayurveda focuses on building strength and balance and immunity. And again, this is through lifestyle choices, this is through herbal supplements, this is through purification treatments. And this is in contrast to this magic bullet approach from the side of Western medicine. And we saw it full on in this past 2 years. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. You didn't hear about anything else. As a matter of fact, treatments that were turning out to be extremely effective with doctors in their own private practice, they were ignored. So again, just an amazing process that we've been through in these last 2 years, where you just see that Western medicine approach to health, it has to be overhauled. Now, one very interesting thing is that, and a good development in Western medicine, is that a lot of medical research is now confirming the principles of Ayurveda. And I'll explain how that is. They're coming to appreciate, because they know so much about the genetic makeup now of individuals, that they're starting to appreciate that healthcare needs to be individual rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. So this is progress. They also are finally acknowledging that stress is a major contributor in the progression of disease. So stress, anxiety, depression. So they're they're seeing how mind is also a contributor to poor health. The mental state is also a contributor to poor health. And the other point is this thing called epigenetics. And that is this discovery that epi means above, and there are these little, what can we say? These switches that sit there above our genes, and based on lifestyle choices. Are you exhausted? Do you stay up late at night? Do you have a poor diet? Or have you made positive lifestyle choices, healthy lifestyle choices? That will determine whether certain genes are switched on or switched off. So healthy lifestyle choices will switch off weaker genetic tendencies. And proper lifestyle choices will switch on the stronger genetic tendencies to support your health. We can't change our genetic makeup, but we can influence how our genetic makeup determines our health by virtue of our lifestyle choices, which then determine what gets switched on and what gets switched off in our genetic makeup. So again, what it's coming back to is finally an understanding that lifestyle choices are crucial to our health. Now, there are other interesting, another interesting point here is that Ayurveda can be sustainable cost-wise. Now, right now, our system, our medical system, is not sustainable just in terms of cost. I was having a meeting with Dr. Brent Bauer at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, some years ago. And he is the head of the complementary and alternative medicine department there at Mayo Clinic. And at one point, I said something to the extent of, I think our healthcare system is breaking. And he stopped me and he said, no, our healthcare system is broken. It's broken. And this was at least probably 10 years ago when he said this. So again, part of this is with the pharmaceutical companies. And I want to explain why it is that pharmaceutical drugs have negative side effects. And it's because almost all drugs come from plants. But you can't patent a plant. You can't. So you can't make money on a plant. So what the pharmaceutical company does is they look to see what is the active ingredient in the plant that can address a chronic disorder. And let's take, for example, willow bark. That's where aspirin comes from. So what they do is they go in and they identify the active ingredient and they pull it out and they chemically reproduce it because now they have something they can patent. Now, what happens is twofold. Number one, you're taking that active ingredient out of the holistic intelligence of the plant because there are many ingredients in that plant that are working synergistically with the active ingredient. Then the next step is that they chemically reproduce. So again, you're losing some value of the natural intelligence of that plant. So as a result, in the case of aspirin, you get something that is going to get rid of your headache, but it's going to aggravate your stomach and could possibly lead to ulcers. So this is just an example why money is driving our healthcare system. It's the desire for profit. And the desire for profit does not put the human being as the top priority. So this is another beautiful example of the advantage of Ayurveda is that we're utilizing the intelligence of the herbs and we're using the holistic intelligence. And this is what makes up the incredible pharmacopoeia and knowledge in Ayurveda of how to address chronic disorders. So last of all here, I just have to move my, I'm going to have to bear with me for just a second here. Sorry that I'm moving everything around. Okay, there we go. So this is another really important point here, and that is that Ayurvedic medicine is based on a paradigm that is diametrically opposed to the Western paradigm. And that is the paradigm of Ayurveda is the fact that intelligence is primary and matter is secondary. It is a spiritual paradigm. It is acknowledging the underlying intelligence. It advocates for the inner healing intelligence of the body, and it places no sense of limitation on what that healing intelligence is capable of doing. Ayurveda is doing one thing. It is supporting the capability, the full capability of the healing intelligence of the body. So I want to go into this a little bit more. I just want to look at my time here. How much more time do I have?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes?
You are pretty good on time. We have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Well, I didn't get to the business of Ayurveda yet. So I think I'm going to skip over this. I would love to go into this a little bit more, and maybe in question and answer period, we can go into it. And that is how profound Ayurveda is, what its spiritual paradigm is, and just go into the mechanics of that, how it works, because it's absolutely fascinating. But I want to be able to get to the business of Ayurveda also. So let me just go down here to the next slide. And what I want to bring out here is that in terms of the business, it was very interesting to look at what our challenges were when we started. Because when we started 30 years ago, nobody had ever heard of Ayurveda. They couldn't pronounce it, they couldn't spell it, they had no idea what it was. And on top of that, we were located in a very unusual place in the frozen cornfields in the winter of Iowa, which when people think of going to a health spa or a health center, they really don't think about going to Iowa. So this was an incredible challenge. And also, digital marketing was not developed. And therefore, we had to get articles in magazines. That's how we were basically doing our marketing. And what was so interesting is that we just stayed right on top of it. We would send out a press release on a weekly basis. And we'd say things like, why should you ask for a raise from your boss after lunch instead of before lunch? And the answer would be, because your boss is probably a Pitta. Pitta people are A-type personalities. They always end up in kind of leadership positions. And they get very irritable if they haven't eaten. So be sure to ask for a raise after lunch when your boss has eaten. So we do kind of clever little things like this, introducing the doshas and the body types and this kind of thing. So after about a year and a half, suddenly Ayurveda started to kind of emerge as a topic that people would cover. And all those magazines would have the thought, wait a minute, Ayurveda, we've heard of that. Somebody's been sending us stuff on this. Let's go back to our file. And there our file would be, a great big huge file they had on Ayurveda. And overnight, we became the Ayurvedic experts. So every single person who was doing an article, they would call us to get a quote, to get a whatever. And basically, we were put on the map. So, of course, the challenges at the time were also the fact that Western medicine was not so open. They're much more open now to the use of alternative medicine, but not so open at that time. So then we have to ask, okay, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities now? And it's a very different landscape right now. And that is, everybody knows about Ayurveda, so there's a lot of competition, but so often it's not authentic Ayurveda. And what that does is it gives Ayurveda a bad name. These people go to a spa and they're going to have an Ayurvedic treatment, and it's not authentic Ayurveda. And then they say things like, oh, I tried Ayurveda, but it doesn't work. So that is a big challenge right now. And that is also due to the commercialization of Ayurveda, where people just pull out little things. Ayurveda is about a Shirodhara. And you kind of miss the whole understanding that it's about lifestyle choices. It's about prevention. It's about holistic health, mind, body, and soul. So that's a challenge right now. And what do we see as a challenge in the future? And then you have to give me 2 more extra minutes because I have a couple other points I want to make. But the challenge in the future is the opportunity is there's going to be incredible demand. We can't have enough Ayurvedic facilities. We can't have enough of them. And people are going to understand they need a different approach to medicine. That's already coming to the fore right now as a result of these past 2 years. But the problem is there's going to be a Western medicine grab in that they're going to start regulating herbs. They're going to start making things have to be by means of prescription. This is something we're going to have to look out for. And the other problem is that big pharma is going to be attempting to patent herbal formulas by altering them, by taking this even farther. So anyway, I want to just now move over to these last 2 points that I wanted to make here. And let's see, here we go. So I want to go over some of the key business principles. And these are the fact that an Ayurvedic clinic, it has very unique considerations in that it has many businesses under one roof. We're a hotel, we're a restaurant, we're a treatment clinic, we're an outpatient doctor clinic, and therefore there are many moving parts and there are many opportunities for one thing not to coordinate with another. And at the same time, what you have is you have clients who are experiencing emotional purification and in some cases physical discomfort. So you have to balance all of this. You have to keep all of your people very happy. You have to make sure that all the services are delivered so they feel that that attention and care is there for them. And yet you've got so many opportunities for something to get missed in that very complex operation that has many moving parts. So I'm just going to say what you need is you need compassion. You need to make sure your customer is always right, no matter what. And for that, sometimes you need a bit of a sense of humor, but they're going through a lot. And even if they're unreasonable, they are always right. That sense of compassion has to be absolutely pervasive through the entire business. And for that, you need a very caring staff. Your staff is essential. And that is true with every business. Your staff makes or breaks your business. And there was one time when this woman from California, she was actually the president of Sony Pictures at the time, Dawn Steele. She was coming through the Raj. And she acknowledged, she said, you have a lot of moving parts here. And she said, I want to give you a tip. She said, what I use is the principle of hire them, fire them, hire them, fire them, hire them, fire them, until you find what you need, and then do everything you can to keep them. So a staff is absolutely essential. And also honestly acknowledging and evaluating your mistakes. It's very important, very, very important. And the other thing is to avoid negativity and conflict. And I just want to say very quickly that there was another guest at the Raj. He was the first person in his family to go to college, and he started a construction business. And that construction business grew to be the biggest construction business in Michigan. And he said to us, the key to his success was the fact that he never allowed his team to focus on any conflict or negativity. And in construction, you get sued, you have contract breaches, all kinds of things. He said, our principle was we resolve any conflict as fast as possible. So avoiding negativity and conflict, just thinking progressively and moving forward, that is the core principle, really, for any business. And certainly we've seen it in ours. So
wonderful. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation, Dr. Candace. Like, I really enjoy the part and love the part where you talk about like sustainable cost-wise. Like at the long run is more sustainable. You know, you are preventing like future pain, future suffer, and of course like future side effects. So I strongly agree with that. I would like to take the opportunity to invite our first panelist, Maya Lisboa, and see what questions she has for you. But again, it was a really great presentation, and thank you so much, Dr. Candace. Thank you. Maya.
Aloha. Thank you, Candace, so much. I really appreciated hearing about the business principles that you relied on to make the Raj one of the most successful Ayurvedic clinics in the United States, and also all those moving parts. I know how that goes. Yes. So in our MBA program, we talk about emotional intelligence as the mother of success. And
Beautiful.
you are referring to that in terms of conflict in the workplace. And so from experience in my professional life, I have noticed over and over again that conflict can stop the flow of creative intelligence and the full manifestation of the success of a business, especially in the form of the time and the resources and energy that it takes to manage persistent and unresolved conflict. So defining emotional intelligence, I think, is important, which is our ability to perceive, to assess, and to positively influence our own emotions, and then the emotions of others in the workplace. So as a reference, I'm really curious to know some specific ways in which you have been able to invite emotional intelligence in the workplace, promote it, and also cultivate that culture with your staff, because I do believe that not only having staff that have the skills to run the business, but also staff that have that emotional intelligence, ability to be self-aware and have empathy for others is really important. So just curious about specific mechanisms or strategies that you have used.
Great question. Wonderful question. Thank you. The key thing is you want your department heads to absolutely have that skill. You know, you can't always ask it of everyone in the whole organization, but your department heads, absolutely, because they'll have the skill to communicate. We can talk about, all right, the women's treatment wing. So the head technician there, she'll have the skill then to communicate and work through with each one of the technicians on that wing. So you know that department is in good hands and that she'll make sure to communicate. And it all comes back to communication. You can't let things fester. You have to kind of bring them up and find ways that everyone is happy. Now, there will be those times where someone who isn't happy and is having problems continuously, then it may be a situation where this isn't the best place for them to work. But here is the key thing. This is a beautiful principle that Maharishi has brought out as well in terms of leadership, and that is you have to look to the purity of your own heart first and foremost. First and foremost, that there's no anger, resentment because someone just messed up and they've just made a customer unhappy. You can't have a punitive sense in your heart. You have to sit down and think through with the person with the desire for the best for them. What's going to help them grow? And if indeed you can come with that innocent of a heart and full enough of a heart where that is your priority, then you can fire them and they'll feel fine about it. You can let them know that they're going to be happier someplace else because they know that you are truly concerned for the best for them. So it really, and it always comes back to management. It always comes back to the people running the place, because how they deal with situations is what sets the culture of the whole business. But that fact that all leadership is based on love is the most important principle that anyone in the field of business can hear, because there's such a tendency to make the bottom line, for the attention to go to the bottom line. But when the attention is on that communication in full integrity with an open heart, your bottom line will thrive. That's the byproduct of doing business properly, which always comes back to just communicating properly and standing in that position where you've removed any resentment or any punitive kind of feeling. So
thank you. That's beautiful. And to bring that piece of love to business, especially appreciating the voice of women and mothers in business as well. So thank you for bringing that piece. I think it's really important, and it speaks to, it all starts with us, right? With our own practice. And that, I think that in this context, transcendental meditation, the practice of self-awareness, and through TM, it's a lot easier for us to cultivate that sense of love and caring and awareness. Whereas outside of MIU and transcendental meditators, I'm curious if you have come across businesses that don't have a meditation practice as their foundation, and then how to inspire that in businesses who perhaps are struggling in maintaining that level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it's a great point. And of course, I really only know the Raj, so I have to speak in that context, but certainly we hire many people who are not meditators. They're from the community, but they don't meditate, but we certainly make that opportunity available. So that is absolutely something that is offered to them. And interestingly enough, over time, everybody comes to our office and says, I'd like to learn TM now. So I think they see that very point that that TM, not only does it connect us to those deeper values of feeling, but it gets rid of the stress and it helps with the fatigue. And that's when we get disconnected from that fine level of feeling. It has so much to do with just fatigue and stress. And that comes back to one of the very beautiful principles that Maharishi gave us as we were opening the Raj. And he said one day, we were on the phone with him, and he said, "Let nature organize by remaining rested. Let nature organize, because it's our fatigue. We get in the way of nature's support." So it was a really important principle that I've never forgotten, and I found it to be extremely useful.
Wow.
Thank you.
That is so great. Thank you so much, Maya and Dr. Candace, for sharing this experience. Like, I can see like words full of wisdom and intelligence. So thank you so much. Let's do now the transition to our second panelist, Roxana Medeiros. And please, Roxana, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Candace G, for inviting me, and Ayako and Edison for hosting. I think this is such a brilliant thing to be facilitating for the community at large. As a registered Ayurvedic doctor, I'm also a senior graduate instructor at MIU, and I'm also currently doing my dissertation on Ayurvedic medicine and its benefits for cardiovascular patients who are dealing with atherosclerosis. And so my thought for you is, in building a business model, how do you see, you touched on this so beautifully about the medical appropriation that happens with Ayurvedic herbology, and how it can just really diminish or even reduce our capacity in the future to be able to provide these sets of principles and knowledge to people around the world who really need to establish that immunity and vitality. How do you think that research in Ayurvedic medicine might support the future of businesses that are trying to thrive as Ayurvedic practices?
It's interesting because Ayurvedic research, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, and I'll explain. And that is, Western research is structured on certain principles, such as random control studies. And random control studies don't work with Ayurveda because you're applying a certain technology, a certain Ayurvedic treatment modality across a broad population. random control. You randomly pick people and then you give this treatment to them to see how they respond. It doesn't work for Ayurveda because Ayurveda is so individual in its approach to health. So we can't just take random people and tell them all to do the same thing. We're going to have to take their pulse. We have to evaluate what's causing their problem. You see, allopathic medicine, they just put labels on things. And so, okay, you have this heart problem, but they don't go to see how, with some people, what gave rise to that heart problem is actually different than what gave rise to that heart problem for someone else. So we're going to be up against this. This is the big challenge. This is our future challenge with Ayurveda. And that is, we're coming up against a paradigm, a Western medicine paradigm that does not fit. And so if we have to go by their paradigm and standards, because if you don't have random control studies, then how can we really assume that this is a valid way of taking care of this particular health problem? But that's not how we're going to show the efficacy of Ayurveda. So it's a big issue. And I think that we can work synergistically with modern medicine as long as we're allowed to practice Ayurveda on our own terms and do our research on our own terms and have Western medicine recognize why we have to structure our research studies the way we have to do that. And there's some brilliant people in Germany who are really working on this, actually, in terms of formulating certain research modalities that will work for Ayurveda and at the same time keep Western medicine happy that we have, in fact, proven that this is an effective approach to a given problem.
Beautifully said, Candace G. You know, I've always felt, I mean, as I started this PhD process, I felt that Ayurveda, and especially Maharishi Ayurveda, with its steeped in consciousness-based approach to health, it transcends our modern medical system, which is the difficulty. And we have these new types of medicines that are becoming more popular, like P4. So preventative, we've got functional medicine over here, and they're all kind of a rift off of Ayurveda. And that's what I'm seeing. And so what I'm trying to do is identify the things that we can correlate between and integrate between Ayurveda and modern medicine. And then the things that we're going to have to just do case study research on. And maybe it's not a randomized control trial, but at least identifying the things that we can identify. And we probably are going to have to be, as you said, so much more sophisticated in our approach to dialing in the certain ways that we see simple things like digestive capacity, what we understand as Agni, understanding what's actually happening in the physiology or in the mind, and that feedback loop of the HPA axis, and how we're understanding, modern medicine is now understanding what we've known, and that the digestion has such an effect on our emotions and mental well-being, right, and vice versa. And they need to label it, but like I was saying, Ayurveda transcends all of that. Right. It's just so far beyond what we can actually put a label on at this point, which I feel is such a beautiful thing. And I want to see, like, in the future, how do I talk about like digestive enzymes and then quantify that against what we understand as the different types of Agni somebody might be experiencing. So I think we're going to have to go down to like the very fundamentals of chemical composition and try to sort those things out and really get the building blocks, so that way we can have a similar language. Yes, but then exactly. that specificity will belong to Maharishi Ayurveda, and it won't be something that's overseen by, the modern medical community's kind of language around that. But using something that's common to translate, I think, could be so powerful, beautiful, monumental for the further perpetuity of this science that I love so much. And it is scientific. It's just not the same as as what we're used to hearing and dealing with these days. So I love that you're hosting this, and I really hope to see in people's future business model them, taking Ayurveda to the next level and keeping note of all of their clients. And I mean, that could be retrospective data that they can look into because it's so personalized.
That's right.
There's so many opportunities. And I think that this is just so brilliant that you're getting the conversation started to seeing how to maneuver this knowledge.
Case studies are so valuable in regard to Ayurveda, but also Roxana, wonderful what you're doing. Wonderful. We need people like you just pushing into this field. Like you said, find those building blocks and start to create a vocabulary and a kind of dialogue that we can have with Western medicine that can bring them into Ayurveda.
That was amazing conversation between the two of you. Like, I can see the connection in this dialogue. So we're a little tight with the time right now. What about if we start like the reflection period and the Q&A? I can see really interesting questions in the chat, and they seem to be really passionate about this topic. So we have one question from Francis Hannah, and he's asking like, how much do you use Jyotish in your decision as a manager and business?
It's so interesting because we're just about to kind of form a partnership with some people. And first thing I did was say, send me your Jyotish charts and we'll send them over to the Jyotishi. So I think that it's an incredible tool for determining compatibility for success. And I wouldn't do it for every position in a company, but I think when you're forming a partnership for sure, and when you have people who are taking, like a department head, where they're going to take some significant responsibility in your company, absolutely fantastic. Like some magical thing, that we get to have to make things go better.
That's great. Wow. All right. We have another question from Prashant Karki, and he wants to know, like, have you thought about addressing the root cause of health problems created by allopathic medicine? Like, how would you fight or face large corporations, investors, and the government that always try hard to slow down, and decrease this type of medicine?
Well, it's interesting because right now we have a lot of people who are calling the Raj to ask if we can help with that they don't feel great after getting the vaccines, or they have long haul COVID. And what's so interesting here is Western medicine doesn't have anything to help them with this. So these are the opportunities where we can start to see how can we undo damage that's been done. And certainly, throughout our 30 years, I can't tell you how many people have been able to go off of their Western medicine because of the Ayurvedic treatments, the Panchakarma treatments, and then the lifestyle recommendations and herbal recommendations. And so many people have just followed those guidelines that our Ayurvedic health experts at the Raj give them. They absolutely follow them to the T. They just want to be able to get off the medication, and it can be done, and it can be done fairly easily. So it's always good to do it in conjunction with their medical doctors so that they're going off medications in a proper way. But this is how we address that, is that it's actually another way to market. And that is, are you tired of the side effects of your medicine that you have to use to address your chronic disorder? And then we can help you with this. So that's the way we address it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I wanted to ask, like most of the times, one of the important things is, as you mentioned, like these lifestyle changes, right? And sometimes people is like too busy or too caught up in the dynamic of society that they don't have time for this. So
Right.
I wanted to ask, like, do you have like any tip or any advice for this type of person that is thinking in this way?
Well, it's interesting. I'm aware of a woman who came not too long ago, a simple person from another town in Iowa, and she had cancer and she couldn't really afford to go through the treatments, but she followed the Ayurvedic recommendations, religiously. And she went into remission and she's doing so well. So it depends on your priorities. How important is your health? Is everything else that you're so busy with, is that more important? Or is your health important? And you get to the point where you realize you can't really do anything without your health. So that's when people just change their lifestyles. And you hope to convince them to do it before it gets to that point, but it gets that way. Now, I'm very happy here to make a few Ayurvedic recommendations because everyone loves tips. They love Ayurvedic tips. And because so many people connected here today, they already know the Ayurvedic tips. I didn't want to include it in my presentation, but I'll just share a couple really simple things that have a huge impact in terms of our health. And they're so simple to do. And that is, of course, practice TM, because it's that underlying intelligence of the body that is the key to all health issues. And that's what's being enlivened when we practice TM and the advanced programs. And the other one is, and this is really hard for everybody, but go to bed and turn the lights off by 9:45 and get up by 6 o'clock. You will transform your life if you can make this a habit. I promise, more than any other change, if you can establish that habit, you will be way ahead. Take a walk for at least 10 minutes, ideally 20 or 30 outdoors in the fresh air within an hour or two of sunrise. Now, if you're getting up at 6 in the morning, you can do that. The quality of air, it's so rejuvenating for the whole physiology, incredibly nourishing. Okay, eat fresh, pure organic foods with lots of sweet, juicy fruits and lots of vegetables. Eat your largest meal in the middle of the day around noon, because that's when your digestion is strongest. Therefore, that's when you'll get a most thorough digesting of your food. Eat a light meal in the evening without meat or rich sauces or cheese. And if possible, eat by 7 o'clock in the evening at the latest. Drink plenty of pure spring water, either warm or room temperature, but never icy cold. So these are basically addressing digestion, and digestion is absolutely key to health. Not becoming exhausted, remaining rested, and having a strong digestion. It's transformative. So anyway, just to give a few tips, wanted to do that.
Thank you so much. That is amazing. That's great. We have one more question. This question is from Viola, and she's asking, like, what do you think will be a good approach to protect Ayurveda from commercialization, meaning the use of Vedic terms and concepts and mixing them, therefore creating like a pseudo Ayurveda, like power of yoga or magic bullet approach by offering herbs as pills to save problems rather than using holistic approach of lifestyle changes?
Exactly. Those are the concerns. And this is where modern medicine's interest in Ayurveda is. So they're doing their research, they're focusing in on, the magic herbal formula. And these are concerns. It's really a wonderful question. And how? It's all through education. It's all through education. And this is why we need, I mean, it's so incredible, really. MIU is incredible that we have a whole Ayurvedic department that is accredited. It's the only accredited Ayurvedic degree program in the country. It's thrilling, but we need lots of them. We need education. We need to grow this program because it's all education. And we have to undo the education that all the doctors get when they go to medical school. It's unbelievable. So it's education is the answer. And that's it, because it's going to impact all of us when people are going and they're getting these Ayurvedic treatments and they're told they're doing Ayurveda, and it just means taking some herbs, or it just means having a Shirodhara, and everything else is left behind. It won't produce the results. It won't produce the results. So this education process, extremely important.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Candace, we really appreciate the time you took for this webinar. I'm sure
And Edison, I want to make one point here. I'm not a medical doctor. Maharishi gave me a PhD after being there in Vlodrop for almost 2 years, studying directly under Maharishi. He gave me a PhD, so people say doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor. I wanted to clarify that, but I'll let you wrap up now. Go right ahead.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We really appreciate your time. And yes, I'm sure it adds a lot of value for all the audience here listening to us. And if any of the panelists wants to add any final remarks, please welcome. And I wanted to thank everybody and to all the students that participate today. And thanks for all our panelists again. Again, thanks to Ayako, Viola, and the entire team for helping facilitate this webinar. And thank you everyone for attending. So if any of the panelists wants to add a final remark, please.
Nothing to add, just deep gratitude for your sharing, Candace. So much, yeah, so much wisdom, and I can see your love and your care for the practice of Ayurveda and the business of Ayurveda. Thanks for being a model and an example for all of us.
It's a precious tradition, and thank you and Roxana as well for your efforts in this regard, because we need thousands of us making this science available. It's what's going to transform life on Earth. There's just no question about it.
That's right. In life, we want like 200% of life, right? Like 100% is the skills we have, the learnings and the tools we get. But the other 100% is like creating new connections in our body, mind, and soul. And I'm pretty sure like through TM and Ayurveda, we can reach this. So thank you so much for giving all this information and for sharing all your experience. Yeah, we are so grateful. I hope everyone have a wonderful weekend. We will send you a copy of the recording. And again, thank you so much. And we really appreciate your time and contribution in this webinar.
Thank you, Edison. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.